All right. So, people, I know nothing about cars. I don't drive. I can never drive. The only thing I really can pick up is the color of the car. All the other stuff, it's over my head, essentially. But the good people at Signature, because this new film is dropping or has just dropped on DVD. They're like, oh, give it a check. So I took a look at Lamborghini, the man behind the legend. Okay. This is directed and written by Bobby Moresco. Okay. The film is produced by Chris Arthur, Monica Baccardi, Alan Dam, Andrea Iravalino, Danielle Maloney. It's executive produced by Andrea Zosso, Brett Saxon, Sergio Navarrete, Gogolimo Machetti, Roman Kopalevich, Thomas Fannin, Jeff Bowler. It's line produced by Corsio Codesca and David Toby. Okay. Cinematography is Blasco Giarato. Music is Tony Rennis and Tomas Cantalinian. Kayla Emter edited the piece. Maricha D'Elia and Bruno Rosato handled the casting. Production design, we have Tiberio Capasori and Muro Vanzati. Set decoration, David Anelio and Federico Costantini. Costume design, Akiko Kusayanje and Paolo Marchesin. Hair makeup, we got Maria Grazia Cansoa, Sandra D'Angelo, Valerie Domingiani, Luigi Esticchio, Mora Meniconi, David Trani, and Lorena Trivellone. Our cast, well, Ferruccio Lamborghini is played by Frank Grillo. A younger version of Ferruccio is played by Romano Reggiani. We have got his best friend Matteo, played by Matteo Leone. His wife, his love, right? Anita, played by Mia Savino. The younger version of Anita is played by Chiria Primavesi. We have Antonio Lamborghini, played by Fortunato Solinio. There is Gregorio Lamborghini, played by Gregorio Cantarini. There is I think there's another Lamborghini floating around. Evelina Lamborghini, played by Francesca Di Martini. Silvio Lamborghini, played by Giovanni Scolti. We've got Enzo Ferrari, played by Gabriel Byrne. There is Modella Ferrari, played by Elise Cass. Vito Rossi, played by Leonardo Cellarini. Gianpaolo Dallara, played by Leonardo Cecchi. Bob Wallace, played by Patrick Brennan. Cecilia Monti, played by Hannah van der Westerhoven. Gabriella, played by Francesca Tizzani. Billy Alland, played by Elena Jones. Dum, dum, dum. Who else do we have? Diego, played by Tommaso Basili. Franco Scagalone, played by Andrea Bruschki. Giotto Bizzani, played by Luca Reminiana. Okay, so the gist of the film is this. Set against a backdrop of post-war Italy, this story mirrors the complex transformation of his homeland. From Lamborghini's modest beginnings, building tractors, to the infamous rivalry he shared with Enzo Ferrari. His unparalleled genius made him a true icon in the automobile industry. However, his passion also ignited emotional turmoil in his personal life, which was full of both romance and tragedy. Told through a tightly constructed narrative style and imaginative visual design, Lamborghini, the legend, is the true story of the man behind the machine. Dum 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 dum. So yes, there you go. This is it's always interesting, right? When you get something like this, because it's like, okay, what is the reality, right? Because whenever something is based on history, real people, it's always fiddled with. You know what I mean? Like, there's always differences. It's never going to be one of those things that is straight, right? You're always gonna find that they've taken some huge liberties, right? It always happens, which is kind of crazy. You know what I mean? Like, we never will get that honest, okay, so this is what really happened. You know what I mean? They will always just mess with things, which is kind of crazy. But it does seem to be the way things go. So, although Bobby Moresco, I think most of his career he's been a producer. He's directed a few films, TV series. This might be the biggest project to date, but he had the following to say. Ferruccio Lamborghini was a man of his time. As a young man, he went to war, a farmer's son, the latest in a long line of farmers and their sons. He came home a veteran of that war who understood that there was a change in the world taking place and he wanted to be part of that change. The rise of Ferruccio Lamborghini from a father's son to a world-renowned industrialist and a possibly the greatest car maker of his or any time coincided with the change in post-war Italy itself from an agricultural nation to an industrial one. It was a fascinating and exciting time for people like Lamborghini and for all of Italy, and great grist for the making of a movie. But set against that big backdrop in storytelling was a smaller story that interested me to no end. How does the mind of a genius work? A difficult question for sure. And since I am like most people, not a genius, the difficulty in telling the story came from trying to get inside the mind and heart if someone like Ferruccio, a visionary. A visionary, by its very definition, means someone who sees things that the rest of us not only do not see, but can barely imagine. What it's like to be someone who thinks differently than everyone else and then has the courage to act on those instincts and ideas. And what is the price paid for being someone who sees things differently, as Ferruccio did? This much I did understand. When one chases a dream, there is always a price to be paid. What I tried to do in telling of this story was to examine and understand Ferruccio Lamborghini from the inside out, to try to understand what drove him to chase a dream that only he saw, and what was the price paid for the chasing of that dream. If after watching the movie you can get a sense of what it might have been like to be Ferruccio Lamborghini, then I thank you for watching, and I'm happy we explored the world together. So yes, that is the thought behind this. And I think this essentially this looks nice, right? It look tonally, it kind of works, right? It feels of the time. So I think that part is handled very well. I think that you can see that he does try to, you know, show you like the ideas flowing from Lamborghini, and how he's inhabiting those spaces. Now I think the thing being, there is a lot of stuff we do not see, right? Because at the beginning, the film is kind of framed around a car, um a car challenge race. Maybe, I don't know. We just see him in a car, a Lamborghini obviously, and Enzo in a Ferrari. It's at night, pull up to some lights, and then they, race each other. And we get, that we come back to that constantly throughout the film. So we start there. Then, we see agriculture, and we have a town square, all the soldiers arriving back from war, right? It's the end of World War II. And he's with Matteo and all of that. Now, in reality, I don't know if that happened, right? Because Lamborghini, he escaped the war, right? When it all, like Italy, and they changed sides so many times, right? It's crazy. And then at the end, when it was all looking, they switched again, and so Germany went for them. right? So they took a load of people prisoner. He fled that. And, he went back to, work on cars for the Germans, right? So he was doing that. Then when the British came to Rhodes, captured it, they put everyone in jail, right? As collaborators. So he was then in jail, I think, since the war ended. So after the war. And then he came back. So I don't know if he would come back in, army clothes, right? Or he'd return at the same time as Matteo. So there's all of that. And then you have to think to yourself, someone that has spent time in jail, someone that's gone through, they're definitely going to be affected by that. But we don't really see how, like, the war may have affected them, right? We just have him do decisions and decide, because he was working as a mechanic, but the way we see it, he's not worked as a mechanic before, other than during the war for the army, right? So it's just like he knows what it is to build and repair, and just from the army and then from after that. But here it's just like, well, no, I believe in myself and I can do it. But when he knows he has those skills because he's been doing it for a while, right? So there's all of these different things, right? The Anita stuff, it's, I think the connections between everyone, it doesn't necessarily come through, I feel. You don't feel that he's madly in love with this girl, right? You don't feel that he would move heaven and earth for her. You don't really see it. You don't really see the connection with Matteo, right? You don't really see the connection with anyone. It just, obviously, right? They're showing people hug and kiss and just all of these kind of things, but that's all superficial. It doesn't permeate into the deeper layers of things here, right? And I think that becomes an issue when certain things happen, right? Because you need to buy this stuff. You need to be completely drawn in, right? He's already, before the tractor, well, after the tractors, he's gone into all these other things, air conditioning and, other businesses before the cars, right? Which then influenced the car stuff. But again, that's not there. We don't see that. There's a few things, right? When Bob comes around, the Kiwi, right? Uh we have him go with Ferruccio to Ferrari, which are just like, there's no rhyme or reason to that happening, right? It's not explained, because it's not for, in any way, for Bob to get the job with Lamborghini. It's just something that happened, and you're just like, why would this happen? Why? Right? There's a few things that are a little bit baffling, and that's kind of like, it's, we don't really see it, right? We have him sketching out cars and things like that, but when he's like, I want you to design me this new crazy imaginative car, you feel with all the other stuff, right? Because he's like, oh, the engine should have this and should have this and blah, 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 blah. Right. So he's given all of that. But then when the first car design cut, he's like, no, no, it's not really. And you just think with the level of detail that he's trying to give people and go, right, I want it to have this horsepower. I want it to do this. There's going to be ideas on design, right? There's going to be all of that, which you would give someone, right? When I'm creating things, when I'm working on logos and brands and things such as that, I don't just go to the designer. I want something unique. No, I'll sketch things out. I'll be like, yeah, I need the colors to be like this. I want the size to be this. It needs to work in these ways. You give people stuff. You give guidelines, a brief. So you kind of feel that he's the type of person who would have given a brief for sure. For sure. It's not gonna, but like these scenes just seem there to kind of give drama, right? I don't know. I don't know. But we jump around a lot. You know, as I said, look, we jump back and forth with this car thing with Enzo, which never really gets resolved. Right? We jump from this period, you know, starting the tractors to suddenly doing cars, right? To suddenly them being later in life. So you're missing all of these steps and thinking, okay, so how do we get here? Because the journey to that place also is going to affect the things he does. But yeah, again, we don't see it. So that becomes a bit of an issue, I felt. That becomes a bit of an issue, you know, because it doesn't really help flesh this out. It doesn't really help give us that insight that Bob wants us to have, you know? Like, as I said, I don't know anything about cars. I'm just fascinated in journeys, right? I'm fascinated in storytelling. So, although, you know, this looks fine, right? Looks fine. And essentially, there are beats to this, but it doesn't connect on an emotional level for me. Doesn't connect on an emotional level. We also have scenes like everyone in the garage dealing with cars, right? And there's numerous scenes when we have even when Ferruccio and Matteo are playing around with the cars and all of that. Never covered in grease, right? Never dirty. You know what I mean? When they're welding, not sweaty, right? It's just those sorts of details that I need in a film, right? I need in a story for me to be fully sucked in, to put myself in those shoes, to kind of go, yes, I feel this moment, you know, and it's not quite there. Some of the acting, like his son at the end, little wooden, right? Some of the accents all over the place, right? All over the place. But I don't know, people, right? If you are a fan of the car, you know, if you like all of that, then maybe, right, you will want to see this, even though the truth and reality might be slightly off, you know, it still may fascinate you. A bit like Air recently, right? There's definitely issues with that story and doubt, you know, similar with Tetris. You kind of like, and especially with Tetris, we know it definitely didn't happen in that order, similar to this Lamborghini joint, right? So I think if you like those stories, then Lamborghini the man behind the legend, yeah, that's possibly going to be fine for you. So, right, it's available on streaming platforms, and now you can own it on DVD and Blu-ray, I do believe. So, that is all good for you, people. That is all good for you. So, yes, people, if you're a car person, maybe you want to check out Lamborghini, the man behind the legend.